everyone, welcome to my channel. Today is a very exciting video that I have prepped and planned and made notes on. And today we're going to be talking about buying versus borrowing, the pros and cons of borrowing from a library and buying a book. Let's talk about it. Just to preface, this is not to pass judgment on anyone who buys a lot of books or only borrows books. This is just some pros and cons, just kind of an open discussion about owning versus borrowing. If you buy all your books, if you borrow all your books, no judgment here, just having a little open discussion. We're gonna start in defense of libraries. I love me a good library. I'm an active library member myself. The very first obvious pro of a library is that the books are free, okay? You don't have to pay to check out the books, and a lot of libraries these days don't have late fees, at least mine doesn't. So even if I turn a book in late, as long as I turn it in undamaged, in good condition, I don't have to pay a fee no matter what. So that makes reading a totally free activity for me. I mean, I just have to drive to the library, pick out my book, pay no money, and I enjoy this really amazing book. Borrowing books from the library makes it free and takes away that monetary element that could make reading inaccessible to some people. In line with the money thing, you don't have to worry about spending money on a book you might not like. Like if you watch my unhauling video, I bought My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Otessa Moshfegh? I think that's how you say her name. And I thought I was going to love the book. So I was like, yeah, I'll just buy it because I'm going to love it, so it's going to be fine. And I ended up hating it. I mean, to be fair, it was a paperback, so I only spent like maybe $12. But that was $12 that I could have spent on something else or saved or invested or whatever. Libraries have this low risk, high reward factor. If you don't like a book, no harm, no foul, you didn't spend any money, just go take it back and drop it in the book bin, right? The next pro of libraries is that they support the community. Libraries are obviously really important aspects of a community. They provide a lot of free resources to people, and they are a nice place to hang out, connect with your peers, do all the things, they're safe. And being an active participant in your library supports, obviously, those things that they're doing for the community, supports their work. It also tells your local officials that libraries are a vital part of your community, which could protect them from budget cuts, reduced funding. I think that's really important to have those places in your community that are just there to support people. Being an active participant in your library, even just checking out one book a month, supports that work and tells people who make the decisions about how money is spent within your community that this is something that is vital and important, that you support, and that they should continue to fund it. Libraries tend to have a broader selection of things. Because here's the thing, bookstores sell one kind of book, okay? They sell the book that sells. They're trying to make money, that's the whole thing. So if it's not gonna sell, they're not gonna have it on their shelves for the most part. I mean, I'm talking about big chain bookstores here. Obviously, local bookstores kind of have a different vibe to them. They're just gonna sell the book that sells, right? Libraries have so many different kinds of books, like even books that you would never even know existed if you didn't see them on the library shelf, because they only have to have like maximum like 2 to 3 copies of each book. They can have so many different kinds of books in different languages, about different religions, about, all this stuff that you would never even think about. Libraries tend to have a broader selection. I've never felt like there's a book that couldn't be found at a library. This is a pro that I don't think that a lot of people talk about, which is when you borrow books from the library, you don't have to then make space for that book in your home. You don't have to buy a bookshelf or think about where you're going to keep it or store it or how you're going to organize it. One of the hardest things to me about owning anything is figuring out where to keep it, how to store it, what to do with it, how to organize it, whatever. And when you borrow from a library, it's eliminating that problem. And especially if you live in like a small apartment or a small house, or like me, like I live in a decently sized house, but I can pretty much only keep my stuff in this room right here that's pretty big, but it's not that big. Only so much stuff can fit in it. It eliminates the need for me to have to find space to keep all these books that I'm accumulating. The next one is libraries are very sustainable. Literally, it's the reuse of the same book over and over and over again. It's super eco-friendly. Does borrowing from a library mean that more copies aren't going to be printed? No, it doesn't mean that. It's you doing your part to not buy new things and to just reuse what is already there. So libraries are a very, very sustainable and eco-friendly thing to be a part of. Libraries are eco-friendly, which is a bonus, obviously. I'm talking about this, and just libraries are great. Like, they're eco-friendly, they're great pillars in the community, they provide a lot of free resources for people. They're great little places to go. And my last point in defense of libraries is that you can always buy the book later, okay? Borrowing a book from a library does not eliminate the idea that you will ever own the book at all. Just because you borrow from a library does not mean that you cannot later own it. So if you just borrowed it from the library and you loved it, you can go pick up a copy if you want to keep it with you. So it's not like borrow or buy. It's not either or. You can borrow and then you can buy if that's what you want. I honestly think that's a really smart way to vet books because, like I said earlier, sometimes you buy a book and you end up not liking it, kind of wasted your money. You know, you can always sell it to someone else or resell it or whatever, but you did kind of waste your money. And if you had just borrowed it from the library first and then bought it later, low risk, high reward. So that wraps up my in defense of libraries portions. I just think libraries are really great just because of what they can give to the people in your community, their sustainability, the fact that it saves you money. There are some pros to owning books. So welcome to in defense of owning. Okay. My first 3 points kind of go together. The first pro of owning is rereadability. If there's a book that you are going to reread often, it's just going to be easier for you to own it because libraries are not going to be reliable to have the book that you want to read when you want to read it if you are an avid rereader of that. If it's a book that you're going to reread a lot, it's just going to be better to own it point blank. And this goes into my next point, which is if you're reading a series, it can be difficult to rely on the library to have the next book in that series when you're ready to read it, right? And there's ways you can go about this. Obviously, if it's a short series, you can check out all the books at once, or you can check out, 1 and 2 and then check out 3 and 4 or whatever. But even then, you might not be able to do that because it might not have 1 and 2 together. Can put, honestly, a real damper on the momentum of reading the series, especially if it's one that you really, really are enjoying and really, really loving, to have to wait to come back to the library, having to put it on hold, go through that whole thing. And so honestly, if you're reading a series, it is sometimes easier to buy it. And my next point, which kind of ties into the series and the rereadability, is ease of access. Obviously, when you own a book, it's easier to access it. And owning a book makes rereading easier, makes reading series easier, and, kind of keeps the momentum of it. And it just makes accessing the titles that you want to read a lot easier. My next point in defense of owning is collectibles. There are some books that are really like collector's items. Like, think about illustrated Harry Potter books, or those like really pretty Barnes & Noble covers of like the classics, Those are collector's items. They're beautiful and you might use them to display. You might like to collect those gorgeous covers, right? Books are pretty to look at, okay? And you can keep it and display it and are kind of collectibles. And like me, even, I have 3 copies of Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince because it's my favorite Harry Potter book. I have obviously like the regular box set edition ones, and then I have 1 in Italian and 1 in Spanish. I think that owning the different covers is really, really cool. Those are kind of collector's items for me. Owning those really pretty covers or those special editions, fun to do that. My next point in defense of owning is that owning a book does not put you on any sort of time restriction. When you check out a book from the library, it has a certain date that it is due back. Don't turn it in by that day that it's due. You're going to start racking up fees. But when you own a book, you can take as much time with it as you want. You can savor it. You can put it down. You can wait a week. You can pick it back up. You can take as much time as you need to read it and to really savor it and to get through it. And that's just not a thing that you can always do with library books because there is kind of a time constraint on it. Another very obvious pro of owning a book is that you can do whatever you want with the book. If you're an annotator, you can write in the margins, put sticky tabs, you can draw, doodle in the cover, whatever. You can lend it out to people. You can take it in the pool and not have to worry about dropping it in the water and having to return a soaking wet library book. You can do literally whatever you want with the book because you don't have anyone to answer to but yourself. I am a person who I bend my covers back, I dog ear my pages, I write in the margins, I take my book in the bath and in the shower with me. And sometimes when I'm having a library book, that can be a real bummer because I can't annotate. I have to be more careful, obviously, about how I'm handling the book because I want to be respectful of the person who will own it next. I want to be respectful of the library's resources. So sometimes owning a book is just easier because you don't gotta answer to no one. My very last point in defense of owning is that owning supports authors. No matter where you buy your book from, it's going to be supporting the author, right? If you buy a book from the bookstore, you're telling that bookstore that this author in this book is really well loved and that they should continue to buy copies of not only this book but the author's future releases. If you buy on Amazon, it pushes up their rankings, and obviously buying it straight from the author can connect them directly to their audience, which I know a lot of authors love, and they also get, I think, a bigger monetary boost when you buy it straight from them. So obviously buying a book supports the author monetarily, helps them build their connection with their audience. Authors love and need, we have to support them, right? But obviously there are other ways you could support authors without buying the books, leaving reviews on Goodreads, and also just like telling your friends to read it, having your friends read it and leave reviews, and keeping that chain going is also a really important way to support authors. Monetarily buying a book is just a very easy way to support authors that I think can be sometimes overlooked when we talk about owning versus borrowing. So in conclusion, borrowing versus buying, both are great for different reasons. I do a little bit of mix of both. I'll buy books, I'll borrow books. But when it comes to borrowing and buying, there truly is no right or wrong answer. But I just thought this was an important discussion to have because there is a lot of consumerism in the book community. I just wanted to kind of have this discussion because borrowing books does not make you a bad reader or a bad booktuber or a bad book talker. I don't own a lot of books, and I don't think you need to be, a reader. Like, I don't know, I feel like in some ways good reader has become is kind of synonymous with owning a lot of books, doing these crazy book hauls, and of course those are really fun to watch, and I want that little rolling ladder library in my house one day, and I'll have to own a lot of books to do that. There's nothing wrong with borrowing books, and there's nothing wrong with owning a little bit of books. There's nothing wrong with owning only a few books, not owning that many books, and it doesn't make you better or worse than the next friend, next person. And borrowing is a really great way to support the community and do some good things and be eco-friendly. That was just my little discussion. Those are my thoughts about it. If you have any thoughts, I would love to hear them. Drop all your thoughts, your comments, your questions, your whatevers in the comments. Let's have a good little discussion here about buying versus borrowing. I'd love to hear what you guys think, what you guys do, kind of maybe what your qualifiers are for if you buy a book or borrow a book. I'd love to hear that too. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!